Hi everyone and welcome to today's session, Mastering Mistakes in Sage 50 Payroll, and over the next 45 minutes we'll explore how to identify and correct some common payroll errors with confidence. My name is Sarah and today I'm joined in the background by my colleague Natalie, who will be keeping an eye on the Q&A panel throughout the session. So if you have any questions as we go, feel free to pop them in there and she will pick any questions up as we go along. So we'll begin by looking at an introduction to some common payroll mistakes. We'll then explore the two main correction methods, so restoring backups or using the rollback option. We'll then also cover how to submit corrections to HMRC, then finish off by looking at adjusting employees' pay, pensions and nominal link as well. Then we'll wrap it up by sharing some further resources for you. So let's get into a bit of an introduction to mastering mistakes. So mistakes happen, so you might overpay or underpay someone. It might be that you've got a statutory payment error, so it might be you've put the wrong dates in or you might put a wrong processing date. Could be that you've forgotten to update an employee's tax code or even NI category if they've recently had a birthday. Or could be that something's wrong with the pension as well, but today we'll show you how to fix these. So there are two main ways to correct errors. So you could adjust it in the next pay run. So that does mean that you won't have to change any history. So you won't have to go back and change any history, but this would mean that employee would need to wait till the next pay period to get what they're owed back or to pay back what they owe you. Now, the second method is to reprocess the payroll. So that's going back to the original pay period, entering the corrected pay values, submitting any FPS adjustments, then adjusting the employee's pay or any HMRC payments from there. Now, reprocessing the payroll, that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So there are some things to consider before you go down the route of reprocessing. So before you do the correction, you want to look at gathering the original information. So original data like pay slips, any original P32s, any pension records, any nominal transactions if you do the nominal link. And you want to also consider if the mistake is in your current year or a previous tax year as well, because that will change how you want to do the correction. You then want to consider how you'll make the correction. So are you going to restore or recover back the payroll? Or are you going to roll back instead? And then you do need to bear in mind that you're going to have to enter the corrected values and reprocess as well. So, you know, how far ago was the correction? What are you going to need to do to get that payroll back up to date? You then want to think about what happens after. So how is it you're going to adjust the employee's pay and what you've paid to HMRC if you've already paid the bill? Do they have a pension? Have the pension contributions changed? It might be that you need to adjust those directly with the provider. Then, of course, the FPS adjustment as well to inform HMRC of all of the changes that you've made on the payroll. So let's take a look at restore or rollback. What we'll do is we'll look at restore first, but we are going to be looking at rollback in a bit more detail today. So if we look at restoring a backup first, so as you probably know, payroll is going to prompt you to take backups at various points during your payroll process. Might be that you store these on your PC in a particular location or a memory stick, and you're going to use that restore option to go back to that particular moment in time. So it is really like taking a step backwards. Now, if you've lost your backups, you might go down the route of using the recover option instead. So the recover option is the same as restoring a backup. However, that's going to use the backup that your payroll takes automatically. So whenever you hit on update records, when you're processing your payroll actually takes a silent backup and it'll store them in the background in an archive folder. And that's the backup that the recover option would use. So that's going to be handy if you've maybe forgotten to take a backup, or if you're just a bit unsure at what time you've taken the backup and you want to go back to just before you've updated your records. But again, remember when you restore your backup, it is like taking a step back in time. So it's going to override all of your existing data with the data from the backup. So I would recommend this option if it's a mistake that's going to affect all or most of your employees. So let's take a little look at the process of actually restoring the backup. So when you go to File and Restore, you're going to see this window, so the Restore wizard. Now, you'll notice that Data Files is already highlighted. That's going to be what's highlighted by default. And that's going to be what you're going to select when you restore back the payroll to make a correction. Now, you can see there is a list of other files that you can select. So things like RTI files, especially, you don't want to select this unless it's in very specific circumstances. So maybe our technical support team have asked you to do that for whatever reason. If it is selected for a normal correction or in error, it can result in duplication with HMRC. So it will essentially reverse the RTI files back. So could it result in an inflated submission, which obviously no one wants. So do be very cautious about that if you are restoring a backup. My top tip would be if you are restoring back, just take a backup before you do it and make any changes. And then if you do, select it by mistake, you can always go back to start from square one. So let's get jumped into payroll and look at a bit of a demo on the restore process. So I have a monthly payroll. I've updated them for September, so month 6. Now I do take regular backups in my payroll. I store them on my PC. I'll just drag these across so you can have a little look. So you can see I take 2 backups per pay run. Got a pre-update backup and a post-update backup. Another tip with this one is I would make sure when you are saving your backups, just to name them something really clear so you know exactly what point in the process you're going back to. Like I mentioned, it is like taking a step back in time. So if you do name the file something really clear, then at least you have a good idea of exactly what part of the process you are going to go back to. So I'll just close that down for now and let's take a look at restoring a backup. So if I maybe wanted to go back to my pre-update September, I would want to go to File, just in the top left. And I'm going to go down to Restore. If it is a recent backup that you want to restore, it might be that it shows in this list here. Don't worry, if it doesn't, you can always browse to it later on in the process. Go next, you'll then see that list of files that I mentioned earlier. So you can see that data files is highlighted automatically, and that's all I want to keep highlighted. Again, I don't want to be selecting RTI files because that's likely going to cause me issues with my submissions. So I'm going to go next, and as you can see, I can now browse to my backups. I want to go back to September pre-update. Once you've selected your file, I want to click on Next and then just Finish. That will start restoring the backup, and then finally, before it confirms that, it will ask you to confirm your password as well, just as an extra layer of security. Now, what you'll notice is now that I've restored my payroll back, you can see my last updated date has now went back to the 31st of August. My last FPS date has stayed the same, which is exactly what I want because I don't want to reverse my submission that's already went. When I do my reprocessing, I am actually just going to adjust against it. So from this point, I could change my process date, make sure it's set to the 30th, then go through and reprocess, enter my payments, reassess any pensions, and go from there. But we will take a look at reprocessing in a bit more detail later in the webinar. Now I'm just going to get restored back up to date, the next part of the demo. And what I want to do just to finish off is to show you the recover option as well. So say if you had maybe forgotten to take your pre-update back up, you know, it definitely does happen. What you could use as an alternative is you could use the recover option. Now, like I mentioned earlier, that is a silent backup that's taken by Payroll automatically whenever you hit on update records. So to get to the recover option, you can go to tasks up at the top, and then you want to go down to recover. Again, always recommended just to take a backup before you do this, just to be on the safe side. Does look a little bit similar to the restore wizard, but the next page will look different. So if I click next, you can see this does look different. You don't have to browse to a file to recover back, but this will have a list of all the backups that have been created when you've hit on update records. So you would select your processing period that you want to go back to, and then you would go ahead and finish there, and that would do the same as restoring a backup, but just using the backups retained by the system. Now I'm just going to cancel out of there. I'm not actually going to recover back just yet. So that's a little bit on the demo for restoring a backup. But like I mentioned earlier, what we're going to look at in a bit more detail is the rollback option, which is quite different from your restore and your recover. So with the rollback option, you can remove payment history for selected employees only. So it's great if you only have one employee to correct, or even if you've just got a handful of employees to do a correction for. Or if you've lost the backup, again, you could use a rollback as an alternative method to correct the payroll. When you do the rollback, it will ask you what period you want to go back to and reprocess from, as you can see just on the screenshot over on the right-hand side. However, you notice it is just going to display your current tax year as well. So it'll display the tax year that you're currently in. If you need to go back to previous tax years, you do need to roll back in chunks. So you would roll back your current year and then previous years from there. But again, we will take a closer look at that in the demo in real time. So let's get jumped back into payroll and look at the rollback option. So I'm going to look at two different scenarios today. First, I'm going to look at a current year correction. So I'm going to look at employee 9. So they actually had a birthday in August. So if I just go in and check my employee record, you can see that they actually had a birthday in August and they turned 66. Now, what that means is I should have changed my NI category. Payroll did prompt me that that needed to happen, but it's been a busy couple of months, so it is something that's just slipped through the net. And I can see by looking at my history tab, yep, it'd be processed on the wrong NIC category. So what I want to do is I'm going to roll back this employee now. Now, because we're doing the current year, I'm going to keep my process date as the 30th of September. But I do want to go back a couple of periods, because remember, August is the first period that I want to go back to. So I'm going to go to tasks right up at the top with my one employee highlighted that I need to correct. And I'm going to go down to rollback. So this one's just above your recover option. Again, before you do any corrections, definitely take a backup before you do it. Just gives you that extra safety net. So I'm going to go next on my rollback wizard. The next page is going to show you any employees that you have selected. So you can see employee 9 is the one that's pulled through from my list. I'm going to go next, and you can see I will have a list of my tax periods in this tax year. Now I want to select the earliest payroll date I want to remove. So I'm going to go back to August, tax month 5. Once I've selected my pay period, I'm going to go next and finish. And press OK. Now, what you can see now is my last updated date from that one employee only has went back to July. So that's then going to allow me to reprocess August and September back up to date. So what I can do now, I'm going to go back into my employee record. Onto my employment tab so I can change the NI category. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my payroll option and change my processing date. Now, the first period I want to reprocess is the 31st of August. I'm going to change my process date to the 31st of August. Go into my enter payments. I can see straight away that the NIC has dropped off. So from there, I can do my pension assessment, rerun my pension assessment if they have a pension scheme. I can rerun any pre-update reports for this person. So I've got an updated report to compare with my pay slips that I've saved down at the time. Now, if you do use the online pay slips, you can also upload an online pay slip, and what that'll do, that'll replace the pay slip that's on the portal already. So it'll replace the incorrect pay slip with the new updated pay slip. And then once that's all done, I can go ahead and re-update my records for August. Now, when you do your FPS adjustment, you always want to do it against your most recent FPS date. So you want to reprocess up until that point. So I wouldn't do any adjustment at this point. I would need to put September payroll back on there first before I can do that. So I'm going to go and change my process date to my September payday. Again, from here, I'd want to be checking my enter payments, reassessing for pensions, rerunning any pre-update reports for this person, uploading my online payslip if it's applicable, if you are using them. And then once that's done, I can go ahead and re-update my records. So you can see now I'm back up to date. It's almost like nothing's happened. My last updated date and my last FPS date are matching. So I would say that is a good rule of thumb to say, right, I am now ready to do my full payment submission adjustment for this person. Again, when you do any FPS adjustments, it does need to be against your most recent FPS that's been sent. So now I'm ready to do my FPS adjustment for this person. There's a couple different places that you can do the FPS adjustment from. So you can just do it from your payroll tasks in payroll and just underneath your normal full payment submission. Or you could do it from your e-submissions and FPS adjustment underneath your tasks on the left. So let's get the adjustment for this employee sent off. So I have my employee highlighted and click on FPS adjustment. My last updated and my last FPS date are matching. Now, because we're past the 30th of September now, I am going to have to pop a late reason in there. So I'm just going to pop a reason for correction. And I'm going to go ahead and get that submitted. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind with the FPS adjustment. If you are correcting more than one pay period, which I am, so, I've had to go back and make changes to August and September. it might be that this liability adjustment figure isn't going to be what you expect it to be. And that's absolutely fine. I would expect that. So the reason for that is the liability adjustment that shows in this window is only going to show you the differences for your most recent pay period. It's nothing to worry about. Any prior periods are going to be submitted as a year-to-date correction in the background of this submission. So if you're a bit unsure, it does throw a lot of people off. But my rule of thumb would be if you're happy with the reports that you've produced when you've reprocessed, you're happy with the history that's in the employee record, get it submitted, it will get it corrected with HMRC. So let's get this current year adjustment sent off. Brilliant. So that's now been successful, and that's employee number 9, all corrected. Now, the second scenario that I want to take a look at today is employee 6. So employee 6 should have gotten a higher bonus paid in March. That's just came to light now. So what I'm going to do, obviously we're going back into last tax year with this one. So I am going to look at reprinting a pay slip just so I've got what was paid at the time handy for when I do my correction. So I'm going to pop my criteria dates in. And I'm just going to go and run my laser historical pay slip. And that's going to give me an idea of what was paid at the time. So I can see that a £500 bonus has been paid back in March for employee 6, but it should have been a bit higher, so it should have been £750. So I'm going to just minimise that for now and come out of my reports. So because we're going back into a previous tax year, I did touch upon this earlier, the rollback does work in chunks. So you first want to roll back anything you've processed in your current year before you can actually go back to your previous tax year. Now, this employee is a current employee, they're processed up to date, so I'm going to have to remove everything for this tax year. So I'm going to highlight employee 6, I'm going to go into tasks, and then down to rollback. Again, I can see employee 6 is the only employee that is shown in my rollback employee wizard. Then I have my list of pay periods for this tax year. Now, because I'm going back to last tax year, I need to remove absolutely everything. So I'm going to go back to tax month 1. That's going to remove everything for this year. I'm then going to go next and finish. Now, if you do need to roll back to a previous year, do be very cautious about this message. It is really easy to skip past. So it is just asking if you want to clear things like year-to-date figures for attachments or statutory payments, things like that. Now, you want to say no to that message, because if they do have a statutory payment, or if they do have an attachment, might be that they don't and you're fine, but on the off chance they do, you don't want to be clearing those figures down, because those figures can carry through from your previous year to your current. So they can be ongoing figures that you want in the record. So just be very cautious about this message. And you do want to select no to that when it crops up. You can see that's process complete. And if we look at the last updated date now, we can see that that is now went all the way back to the 31st of March 2025. So it's went all the way back to month 12. Now I actually need to reprocess month 12. So I'm going to need to roll back that additional period as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to change my processing date. And I'm going to need to change it back to last tax year. So I've changed that back to my month 12 pay date for my 24-25 tax year. Now I've changed my processing date, I want to go and roll back again. So if I go to tasks and back down to roll back, again, I've got my one employee. You can see now that I've removed my current year and I've popped my processing date back into last tax year, it's opened up the option for me to roll back to any periods in my previous year as well. Now, luckily, I just need to remove month 12, so I am just going to keep that one highlighted. Go next and finish. And you can see what that's done is that has changed my last updated date back to 28th of February, which is going to allow me to reprocess my 31st of March. Now, I've already changed my processing date to my month 12 processing date. I'm going to enter payments. So I need to now change that to 750. I'm going to save that. Again, you can reassess any pensions or run any pre-update reports at this point. So I can go into my pre-update reports and I can now get an updated payslip to compare against my previous payslip. Once I'm happy with my month 12, I could go ahead and lock in my correction and update my records. Now, in terms of the submission for this one, it works the same way as the rollback does. So if you are correcting multiple tax years, you want to do an adjustment for your previous year before you go ahead and reprocess your current year. So I don't want to do any reprocessing in my current tax year yet, because I've corrected up until month 12 in my previous year. So now I am going to be at the point where I want to do my submission. Again, great rule of thumb with this is you can see now my last updated date and my last FPS date for this year are matching. So that's a good signal that I'm now ready to do my adjustment. So now that we've reprocessed our month 12, we want to do something called an amend a previous tax year submission. So you can get this from your e-submissions. It is different from your FPS adjustment. So instead of FPS adjustment, it's this option here you want to be going into to amend any prior years. Now, a couple of things to consider with this one. When you're doing an amendment to a previous year, you do want to pop your processing date to the 5th of April of whatever year that you're going to adjust. So I'm going to pop that date in there. And I'm going to go to my e-submissions and my amend a previous tax year. Pop my correction to earlier submission in there. And this works the same as an FPS adjustment, just slightly different option that you would go into to select it. I can get that submitted and that will get sent to HMRC to correct that employee's records. Now, once this is sent off for your previous year, you can then crack on and reprocess your current year at that point. Now, something I did want to just touch upon, if you do like to see your submissions in a bit more detail, or if you maybe want to print out a log, you can always view them in the e-submissions log. So we've got our FPS adjustments down at the bottom. Or if you do want to break it down into more detail, or if you've maybe corrected multiple months and you do want to see that year-to-date breakdown, you can always use the FPS viewer. FPS viewer is going to give you a bit more detail on the adjustment. And if you use this columns button in the top right, you can also toggle on the year to date as well. So if you do need to do any more in-depth analysis, then FPS Viewer is definitely the place to be. So that's it on the demo for now. So I appreciate it has been a lot of information to digest with that one. So I do just want to run through a little bit of a recap of the two submissions that we've just seen and some further considerations as well. So we looked at an FPS adjustment first. That is for your current tax year, and that's going to be submitted at the point where payroll is up to date again. So again, my rule of thumb with it is if your last updated and your last FPS date are matching after your correction and after your reprocessing, that's a good sign you're at the point where you're ready to do your FPS adjustment. The FPS adjustment is going to send over any liability changes to HMRC. And again, just something to know if you are correcting more than one pay period with this one. So for example, you're making a correction in May, but you've processed up until September, the liability adjustment in the FPS window will only show the differences for the most recent pay period. Again, it's nothing at all to worry about. Any prior periods are going to be submitted in the background as a year-to-date correction. So as long as you're happy with your reports and what you've actually reprocessed, then just submit it and it will get it corrected with HMRC. We then looked at the amended previous tax year option. So it's going to work the same as an FPS adjustment, but for any previous tax years. There are a couple of things to consider when submitting an amendment in a previous year. So firstly, you want to submit it before reprocessing any of your current year. If you have any later periods updated, it's not actually going to allow you to submit that. Your processing date does also need to be set to the 5th of April of the relevant year. And with that one, if you do need to correct tax years 23, 24 or earlier, I would recommend maybe trying basic tools if you do have only a couple of employees to correct. Or if not, you do want to get in touch for to technical support for further advice on those ones. So anything 23, 24 or earlier, just reach out and get a bit more advice from support. Those years do get a little bit harder to correct. So that's it on the two submissions that we've just seen in the demonstration. I did want to look at some times where maybe you can't adjust through Sage 50 Payroll as well. So there might be some scenarios where you've got to make the correction with HMRC rather than through payroll. And here are just some of the most common ones. So might be if you need to submit an amendment to the 1920 tax year or prior. So those ones you would need to correct using basic tools or directly with HMRC. If you've submitted a duplicate FPS, so if you have maybe highlighted RTI files in error and you've ended up submitting a duplicate when you've already sent one, that can't be rectified, so you will need to correct that with HMRC. If HMRC requests another FPS adjustment is sent, if you've already sent one and there hasn't been any further changes, so with this one, if there haven't been any further changes, payroll won't actually allow you to submit it, because the way payroll works is it will look for any changes to make that submission. So if there's been no changes, it won't submit. Then finally, if they ask you to submit an FPS for a period prior to your FPS, your last FPS date, so say if your last FPS date was the 30th of September, but they want an FPS submitted for August, can't be done because you've already sent a later one. So with these ones, and there is some links on the handout that will run through some more scenarios, a bit less common ones, but with those ones it is just a case of giving HMRC a call, speaking with them, and they should be able to advise you further on that one. So to finish off, I just want to talk about some things to consider after your correction. So Adjusting your employee's pay, so it may be you want to adjust it on the next pay slip. Easiest way to do this is by comparing the original pay slip to the new corrected pay slip. After that, it is just a case of looking at the difference in the net. Then you can make an additional payment or deduction for that amount. So as you've seen in the demo, I produced my original pay slip, what was paid at the time. I then produced a new pay slip with my updated values. So I can then look at those two reports, compare them, look at the difference of the net, and then make my payment from there, or my deduction. Now, same goes with HMRC. So if you've already paid HMRC, it might well be that the amount that you've paid is going to be different based on the correction. So again, this is very similar to the pay slip. So you just want to look at the original P32 and then the corrected P32, look at the difference in the amount due, and then from there you can make any additional payment or deduct any overpayment from your next bill with HMRC. A few other things you might want to double check. It might just depend on how you process your payroll or the nature of your payroll at the time. So it's going to be things like, do you have any changes in statutory payments? So you might want to resubmit your EPS after you've done your correction if there's a difference in the amount. Is there going to be a change in pension contributions? So you can print any updated pension reports and settle any differences with the pension provider directly. And finally, nominal link. So if you do use the nominal link between payroll and your accounting software, if you've already posted the nominal link, you could post it again and then reverse the original journals, or you could post the corrected ones to file and then make a manual adjustment in your accounts. So could do either or, but if you click on the link in the handout, that will take you through some steps to resolve that. So that's it for the demo today on Mastering Mistakes. I do want to finish off just by running through some further support. So we do have some exciting webinars still to come throughout October. So make sure to follow the link on the handout and get signed up whenever you can. The Help Centre is a really great resource as well. You can access it easy by clicking on the help icon in Sage 50 Payroll just next to your reports. Or if you prefer, you can access via the web by going to sage.co.uk/help. You can get our technical support guides on there. You can get our recorded on demand webinars on there and info on how to get in touch with the team if you need to. I did want to shout out Sage University as well. So it's a really great resource, this one. You can do anything from bite-sized bits of learning to full certifications. Great thing about it is you can do it all at your own pace as well. It's totally free to set up an account and explore. So just go to sageu.com and take a look whenever you've got a second. So before I close the webinar down, I am going to stick around for the next few minutes just to help Natalie out with any questions. So if you do have any remaining questions, make sure to pop them in the Q&A now. I'll just pop on to mute for now and I will see you all shortly to get the session wrapped up. Hi again, everyone. I really hope you've enjoyed today's session. I haven't had any more questions coming through. Just had a couple more there. You will all get sent a copy of the webinar. So on that note, we will close the session down in the next minute or so. As you exit, you will see a short survey. Please do take a moment to fill that out. Feedback is really valuable to us. I really would love to hear what you thought, what worked well, anything that could be improved so we can keep making these sessions even better for you. So you will receive a follow-up email later today. It will have a link to the webinar recording on there and information on how to register for any future sessions. So I could see a couple of messages in the Q&A there. Don't worry if you have missed any of today. You will get sent it via email. That will be about an hour's time from now. So keep an eye out from that. But thanks again from me and Natalie for joining us today. Hopefully we will see you again very soon, but it is goodbye for now.